Dollar. Dirt and money, no soul. Had to go and get it, ain't no time to kick it. Got a stack and flip for my foes. Dollar. Please tell me you can hear me. Don't turn your back and don't neglect me. Just let me know if you need me. Dollar. Let me watch out for my partners. Keep my money long, get my team strong. Let me run away from my problems.
Yo, what's good, original crew, man? We're back. Hey, man. Back on the channel. We got another Mr. Ballin' for us today. Today's video, New York couples' crazy secret life led to murder. Man, that's dark. Deep, but dark. What you think? We got another murder mystery, see? Mm-hmm. Another true crime?
I'm struggling over here.
Make sure y'all check out the links in the description box.
Down below.
You already know where to go. If you want to first support, you got to do is check out down below. Also, if you enjoyed today's video,
like it with a thumbs up.
We highly appreciate it, y'all. Also, if you haven't, I don't know where am I going? No, I don't know why I'm having like a weird brain fart. But hey, shout out to the comment of the day.
Shout out to you.
I think we just do too many videos at this point. But let's go. Let's check it out. Let's see what's about. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
Today's story is about a murder from 2003 in Rochester, New York. Now, at first, when you listen to this story, it's going to sound like a sort of run-of-the-mill murder case, if there is such a thing. But it's not. When you get to the end of the episode, we're going to reveal one piece of information that you didn't have, that not only will inform why anything happened in the story, it'll completely explain that, but more than that, it will totally alter your perspective of what you thought was happening when you first listened to the story. I'm sure a lot of you, once you reach the end, may consider listening to this story all over again. But before we get into today's story, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you've come to the right place, because that's all we do, and we upload 2, 3, even 4 times every week. So if that's of interest to you, the next time the like button is having all their friends over for game night, secretly sneak into their house and replace all of their air fresheners with fart spray. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. Okay, let's get into today's story. On the morning of Sunday, July 13th, 2003, 26-year-old Tabitha Bryant walked through the front door of her big white house in Penfield, New York, which was an upper-middle-class suburb of Rochester. Her husband, Kevin, and their 2 young sons followed her inside, and they were all dressed in their Sunday best because they had just come back from church. However, on this morning, Tabitha sort of felt like a fraud because she knew she was not really living a Christian lifestyle. So Tabitha was actually having an affair with a guy named Keith, and her husband Kevin, who was 45 and nearly 20 years her senior, he had recently found out about it and confronted her about it. Tabitha, during this confrontation, had promised Kevin that she would end the affair, and then she and Kevin had agreed that they really needed to work on their marriage together. But despite sort of coming to a kind of resolution, it was very obvious that Kevin was still very mad at her. And so Tabitha had been sleeping on the pull-out couch in the den ever since. Now, Tabitha watched as Kevin grabbed his briefcase off the kitchen counter, he kissed their 2 boys goodbye, and then he walked back out to his car. Tabitha was used to him disappearing to the office on the weekends. Kevin was a lawyer, and he worked basically all the time. And, they did depend on his salary, his big salary, to pay their mortgage and also finance their expensive lifestyle with vacations and lots of nights out. Now, despite Kevin's salary being so sizable, they had for a while tried to supplement his income by renting out a bedroom in their house to Tabitha's half-brother, Cyril Weinbrenner, and his girlfriend, Cassidy Green. However, that arrangement, despite it being profitable for the couple, had ultimately soured when Cyril, the half-brother, had begun using drugs inside of the house. And so Cyril and Cassidy had moved out 2 months earlier. But despite, the terms on which they left, the group, Cyril, Cassidy, Tabitha, Kevin, their family, they remained friends, and they would still actually spend time together on the weekends. It was just they were not able to live together. Now, Tabitha, she did like having that extra money coming in, but the truth was, having her whole house back to herself was ultimately a good thing. Like, she felt relieved in some ways. But also, there was a part of her that sort of missed having, her half-brother and Cassidy around. Especially when Kevin was, gone all the time working. Like, she just felt lonely. And also, on top of just being lonely, Tabitha often was the one saddled with childcare. They had a toddler and a 5-year-old, and, she was just sort of taking care of kids all the time, or sort of isolated. It was just exhausting. And now, as she watched Kevin back his car out of the driveway, she could tell today was going to be another long, exhausting, lonely day. That night, around 9 p.m., Tabitha was fast asleep on Kevin's bed with one of their sons when she felt somebody shaking her. And when she opened her eyes and looked up, she saw Kevin standing right over her. And he leaned down and he whispered to her that it was very late and that Tabitha should go to her bed out on the pull-out couch. And then he picked up their sleeping son and carried him off to...
Hold on, see, why you look like that?
I was just.
She look like...
I know she's been sleeping on the couch because what happened and all that and stuff. I just said, well, dang.
She said, I'm a pause.
her bed out on the pull-out couch. And then he picked up their sleeping son and carried him off to the boys' bedroom without waiting for a response from Tabitha. As Tabitha got out of bed, she thought about just staying put and insisting on sleeping in the master bedroom that night. But, their kids were already asleep, and she also didn't want to risk getting into a fight with Kevin, especially at this hour, and waking everyone up. And so ultimately, she decided against it and just left the bedroom and headed downstairs to the den. And then when she got there, Tabitha unfolded the pull-out couch and lay down, and she tried to fall asleep, but after tossing and turning for a while, she just pulled out her phone. And she pulled up the number for Keith, the guy she'd been having an affair with. As she did this, she reminded herself that she had promised to end things with Keith. But she was also feeling sort of desperate for someone to talk to. And Kevin was clearly very intentionally shutting her out, so after a moment, Tabitha hit the call button. Later that same night, around midnight, 911 operator Jacqueline Sanabria had just started her shift at the Monroe County Sheriff's Office when a call came in. Jacqueline answered it, and immediately this man's voice came over the line saying his wife had just been shot. And so right away, Jacqueline followed protocol, and as calm as she could, she asked the man, had he attempted CPR? And the man, in this eerily calm voice, said no, he hadn't. And the reason he gave was there was simply too much blood. At 1:45 a.m. on July 14th, 2003, so about 2 hours after that 911 call, Sergeant Paul Sienna of the Monroe County Sheriff's Department pulled up in front of a large white house with black shutters and an attached garage. There were a bunch of police cruisers and forensics vans that were already on the scene, and Sienna could see neighbors who were kind of coming outside, watching from their lawns and driveways, trying to figure out what was going on. Sienna had been very surprised when he had gotten the call from dispatch about a murder in Penfield, because Penfield was a really nice, safe area. In fact, there had not been a single murder there in more than 40 years. Now, he climbed out of his car and walked over to the front lawn where 3 deputies were interviewing this middle-aged man who looked like he might have just gotten out of bed. One of the deputies saw Sergeant Sienna, and so he ran over to him and began to brief him on what they knew. He explained to Sienna that the man they were speaking to was Kevin Bryant. He was the man who had called 911, and he was the husband of the victim, Tabitha Bryant. The deputy said that Tabitha and Kevin's 2 young sons had been inside the house at the time of the shooting, but their grandparents had picked them up a few minutes ago. The house itself had already been searched, and there were no signs of forced entry, but it was not hard to guess how the killer or killers got inside. The garage door had been left open, and then the door between the inside of the garage and the inside of the house had been left unlocked. So basically anybody off the street could have just waltzed into the house. Now, Sienna knew that in nice, safe neighborhoods like Penfield, it was not unusual for people to leave their doors and garage doors unlocked or even open. But at the same time, he did think it was a little unusual that it just so happened that on the night of the shooting, the the house was unsecured, so he wasn't really sure what to make of that. At this point, Sienna glanced over at the husband, Kevin, and he saw Kevin suddenly bend over and start dry heaving. Now, Sienna definitely wanted to talk to Kevin, but really he needed to check out the crime scene first. And also considering how, Kevin did not appear to be ready to talk right now, he figured he should just go inside and have a look around. So he ducked under the police tape that was roping off the garage, and he made his way inside. Once inside the house, Sienna passed the kitchen and also a playroom, and they looked relatively normal. And then he got to the den, and there was nothing normal about the den. There was blood everywhere. On the walls, the floor, the ceiling, and there were all these forensic technicians that were inside of the den, furiously swabbing all over the room, trying to take samples of all this blood and also trying to photograph the entire scene. And in the middle of all this chaos happening in the den, Sienna saw the victim, Tabitha Bryant. She was laying on the pull-out couch bed. As Sienna walked over to the body to get a closer look, right away he saw this was not just a shooting, because Tabitha had, more than a dozen stab wounds to her chest and her neck. And then also right below her right eye, there was this small, clean hole that Sienna recognized as a gunshot wound. This was an excessive amount of violence.
Oh, so you telling me 12 stabs, single gun to the face right below the eye. Mm-hmm. That's personal as hell. Mm-hmm. Hold on. Mm-hmm. A gunshot, unless somebody uses a silencer. So I'm assuming stab. You know what I'm saying?
But even
and then pow.
But even then, I'm gonna be screaming to the top of my lungs.
True.
Like,
True.
I'm so a little confused.
Because 12,
but I don't know how.
12 jabs ain't gonna.
Yeah, but I don't know how hard
quick.
people sleep or how, like, the layout of the house.
Oh, you didn't see the house? The bases.
Yeah, but I'm talking about, like, where the rooms are.
Oh, talking about position-wise.
Mm-hmm.
And it made Sienna think that this could have been a crime of passion. And the fact that Tabitha clearly had been sleeping on the pull-out couch in the den instead of in bed with her husband made Tabitha's husband, Kevin, Sienna's prime suspect. At 8:40 a.m. on July 14th, 2003, so about 9 hours after Tabitha Bryant was killed, Sergeant Paul Sienna sat across from her husband, Kevin, at a diner in Rochester, New York. Now, normally, Sienna would conduct interviews like this at the sheriff's office, but he was starving after spending all night on his feet at the crime scene, and he also hoped that, this informal setting would hopefully get Kevin to be a bit more talkative. So Sienna was suspicious of Kevin, one, because he was the husband of the victim, and right away, in murder cases, spouses are regarded as early suspects, and then also just this unusually violent murder. I mean, the murder itself was rare in a town like this, but it was just so violent, so much gore and blood. It just sort of screamed, this is a personal attack. This is a crime of passion. Again, making Kevin seem sort of suspicious here. However, the physical evidence made it look like Kevin actually could not have done it. He didn't have any blood or defensive injuries on him, which would make sense if he was the killer. I mean, given how much blood was at the scene, there should be some on him. And Sienna had checked the sinks and showers at the house to see if maybe Kevin had gotten blood on himself but cleaned himself up before police arrived. But there was no sign that there had been blood in the drains. Plus, the police had spent all night searching the house for murder weapons, a gun and maybe a knife. And so far, they hadn't found anything. Still, though, Sienna was not ready to, outright dismiss Kevin as a suspect, and he was looking for any holes in Kevin's story at this point. As Kevin had already explained multiple times by this point, he said he had come home from work around 9 p.m. the night before. He said he took the trash out, and then he went right up to his bedroom to read, while Tabitha was asleep on the pull-out couch downstairs. But at around 11:30 p.m., Kevin said he had gotten a very strange phone call. He had answered, and it was a woman, and she had said hello, but then it was silent, and there was just static on the line. Kevin eventually had just hung up and said he thought it was just a wrong number, But then he said a little while later, just before midnight, he'd heard gunshots and screams. Kevin said at that point, he got up and he ran to his kids' bedrooms first to make sure they were safe. And when he saw they were, then...
Hold on. Why would you run to your kids? Did it sound like a... Never mind.
To his kids' bedrooms first to make sure they were safe. And when he saw they were, then he went downstairs and he found Tabitha dead in the den. And so now Sienna, sitting across from Kevin in their booth, he asked him, do you have any idea who could have done this? And Kevin, he paused for a moment. And then when he spoke, his voice cracked and he actually began to cry as he sort of choked out that his wife's death was his fault. Now, at first, Sienna thought, oh my goodness, is this guy about to confess? Did he kill her? Is he going to tell me that? But when he pressed Kevin to continue, like, what do you mean by that? Kevin very tearfully would say that, he thought he maybe was the one who had left the garage open when he had taken out the trash. And he suspected that that must have been how the killer or killers got inside. And then, sort of oddly, Kevin continued and basically began to lay out this whole theory for what might have happened that night, sort of unprompted. He's giving his opinion. Kevin said, as he saw it, a burglar must have driven by, saw their garage was open, and decided to rob the house. However, he said when they went inside the house to rob it, they must have been caught off guard when they saw Tabitha in the den. And she must have woken up, and there must have been some sort of confrontation, and the burglar or burglars must have panicked and killed her and then fled without even robbing the place. Like, that's probably what happened. And Sergeant Sienna did not give off how he felt about, what Kevin was doing and what he was saying. He just sort of nodded thoughtfully, like he was considering his theory. However, in reality, Sienna had already considered the possibility of this being a burglary gone wrong, but the way Tabitha had actually been killed just felt way too personal to chalk it up to a random intruder. And also, again, nothing from the house had been stolen. So what Sienna really wanted to know from Kevin was, why was Tabitha sleeping on the couch and not up with you? And to Sienna's surprise, Kevin was actually really open about these problems in their marriage. He explained that Tabitha was young, 20 years younger than he was, and she wanted to go to clubs and see friends every night of the week, while he was, usually too busy and too tired for doing that kind of stuff, so she would do it alone. Kevin said that once he'd realized his marriage was actually in trouble because of this dynamic, he said he'd put a lot of effort in to try to fix it by taking Tabitha out more often. And he'd thought things were basically back on track until a few months ago when he'd found out that she was actually having an affair. He said he'd drawn up divorce papers and been on the verge of filing them, but Tabitha had ultimately promised that she would break off the affair. So he had decided to give her one more chance. As Kevin said this, Sienna watched him very closely, trying to gauge whether or not Kevin was lying. Kevin definitely seemed nervous as he was speaking, and he also kept tapping his foot and running his fingers through his hair. But there was a chance that was also just exhaustion and maybe some shock, lingering shock. Sienna checked his watch and saw it was almost 9 o'clock. And he knew Kevin, by this point, had been awake for about 24 hours. But Sienna didn't want to just let him off the hook right now, because if Kevin was guilty, if he really did kill his wife, or had something to do with it, Sienna knew he might never get a better shot at a confession than right now. So he decided he would just push Kevin to his breaking point and see if he'd crack. 8 hours later, around 4 p.m., Sienna stared at Kevin from across an interview room at the Monroe County Sheriff's Office in downtown Rochester. Kevin was sort of slumped in his chair with his head buried in his hands, and he kept complaining about migraines. Now, Sienna was not surprised that Kevin might be feeling worn out right about now, because he'd been answering questions for the last 17 hours. And they'd covered everything from the details of Kevin and Tabitha's relationship to their extended families, including the fact that Tabitha's half-brother, Cyril, had lived with them for a few months earlier in the year and it had sort of ended badly. And by this point, Kevin had made it clear that he actually thought Keith Cromwell, the guy Tabitha had been cheating on him with, should be a suspect, and Sienna had to agree. However, what Sienna couldn't get over right now was just how angry Kevin sounded. whenever he mentioned Keith, I mean, he was truly enraged. He clearly was not remotely over his wife's affair. And so now Sienna was trying to gauge if maybe Kevin was angry enough about this to have committed murder. And so Sienna decided he would push Kevin a little bit further and extend the interview. And he did this by suggesting that they go ahead and order dinner. And at that point, Kevin, who was totally mad, he jumped up out of his chair and he said that unless he was under arrest, he needed to go back to his kids. And Sienna did not have the evidence to hold Kevin, so he had no choice but to tell him that, of course, he was free to leave. And as Sienna watched a deputy escort Kevin out of the room, he felt a little disappointed that he had not managed to get a confession. But he had gotten some pretty promising leads. Primarily, there was Tabitha's half-brother, Cyril, who definitely sounded like he knew a lot about Kevin and Tabitha's relationship, and he could have some good insights. And also, Sienna was thinking, as soon as possible, he needed to speak to Keith, who was Tabitha's affair partner. At 10 a.m. the next morning, Sergeant Sienna sat across from a broad-shouldered, bald, middle-aged man in the living room of a small house outside of Rochester. This was Keith Cromwell, the man that Tabitha had been having an affair with, and he struck Sienna as being a pretty tough, intense guy. So Sienna was actually a bit taken aback when he asked Keith about his affair with Tabitha, and Keith just began to cry. It just seemed sort of uncharacteristic for the way he appeared, at least at first glance. But Keith quickly wiped his eyes and he apologized, and then he asked what exactly Sienna wanted to know. And Sienna told him to just, start at the beginning. So Keith explained that he was a machine operator at a local factory, and it was a really stressful job. So Keith would sometimes blow off steam by going to a nearby strip club. And it was at that strip club about 6 months earlier that he had met Tabitha Bryant. And this really caught Sienna off guard. And he immediately asked Keith, what was Tabitha doing there at the strip club? But Keith just shrugged and said Tabitha had a wild side. She was a regular there. Sienna was still sort of taken aback by this and really didn't know what to think of it. But he just told Keith to keep telling his story. And so Keith continued, and he explained how he and Tabitha had exchanged numbers that first night, and then started texting and calling, and how that eventually turned into regular meetups when Kevin was at work. He said by July, they were hanging out several times a week and speaking on the phone basically every day. And Keith said this continued right up until Tabitha's death. And here, Sienna had to stop Keith again, because Kevin had told Sienna that Tabitha and Keith, their affair was over. But here Keith was basically telling Sienna the opposite. And so when Sienna pressed him on it, Keith said that actually Tabitha had called him around 11 p.m. on Sunday night, only about an hour before she was killed. And so this timing just felt like way too big of a coincidence, and it made Sienna wonder if Keith was actually just trying to give himself an alibi. Except it was not a very good one, because Keith lived close enough to Tabitha and Kevin that after that last phone call at about 11 o'clock, he would have had time to hang up the phone and drive over to their house and commit the murder by midnight. So this really wasn't an alibi. So now Sienna realized he was in a tough spot here. Tabitha's affair really gave both Kevin and Keith strong motives to want to kill her. And so basically neither man could be ruled out. They were kind of like equally primary suspects at this point. And on top of that, the additional information that Tabitha had been a regular at a strip club just raised a lot of additional questions. He realized he really needed to speak to someone who really knew Tabitha. Five days later, on July 19, 2003, Sergeant Sienna stood inside of a cemetery at the back of a group of mourners and watched as Tabitha Bryant's casket was lowered into the ground. Sienna had come to Tabitha's funeral not only to pay his respects, but also because he was looking for her half-brother, Cyril, and he had two reasons he really wanted to speak to him. First of all, he thought Cyril might have some additional unique insights into Tabitha's various relationships. I mean, Cyril had lived with Tabitha and Kevin and their kids earlier that year, and Sienna had heard that Cyril and Tabitha were quite close, and so maybe she had shared some additional insights that he would know. But the second reason for wanting to speak to Cyril was recently, Sienna had also begun to look at Cyril as being maybe a potential suspect. So Sienna had spoken with a number of Tabitha's friends, and from those interviews, Sienna had learned that Cyril and his girlfriend Cassidy were also both regulars at that same strip club that Tabitha went to. And then on top of that, Sienna knew that, Cyril and Cassidy had been caught using drugs by Tabitha and Kevin, and that's why they had been booted from the house just a few months ago. And so who knows, there could be some bad blood there. And so this made Sienna wonder if Tabitha's murder might have had nothing to do with her affair, and everything to do with, very likely some fight that she had had with Cyril and Cassidy when she caught them and kicked them out. But now, as Sienna scanned the funeral crowd, he didn't see anybody who matched Cyril's description. And so when the service ended and all the mourners began making their way out to the parking lot, Sienna hustled over to Tabitha's mother, and he asked her, had Cyril attended the funeral? And she said that actually, no one had heard from Cyril since the night Tabitha was killed. And she said that she was really worried about him because Cyril's mental health was quite fragile. About a year earlier, he'd suffered a huge mental breakdown after the death of another sibling, which was why Tabitha had invited him to live with her in the first place. And so now Tabitha's mom was afraid that Cyril had spiraled again and might be in trouble. But as empathetic as Sienna was, ultimately, this information he was getting from the mother did not paint Cyril as like a guy in need of help. It painted Cyril as being really suspicious. And so as politely as he could, Sienna asked the mom if she had any idea of how he could go about trying to find Cyril, any way he could even begin that process. And Tabitha's mom, she thought for a moment and then said that if anyone knew where Cyril was, it was his girlfriend, Cassidy Green. One night, about a week after Tabitha's funeral, Sergeant Sienna sat in the back of an unmarked van in downtown Rochester. And through the windshield, he watched a man standing alone in an alley, pacing back and forth, constantly checking his phone. This was all part of a sting operation that Sienna hoped would finally lead him to Tabitha's half-brother Cyril. Ever since Tabitha's funeral, he and his fellow deputies have been trying to track Cyril down, but so far they'd had no luck. It looked an awful lot like Cyril had either left town or was actively hiding from the police. However, Sienna had managed to locate Cyril's girlfriend, Cassidy, who, it would turn out, was well known to the police for being a drug dealer and an escort, who went by the working name of Angel. Now, Sienna doubted that if he approached Cassidy directly, that she would just immediately give up Cyril's location willingly. And so what he needed to do was get leverage on her first. So Sienna went to an informant of his with a plan. The informant would reach out to Cassidy, or Angel, looking to buy some cocaine, and then once they had clear evidence that she had broken the law by selling these drugs, Sienna would arrest her and then try to strike a deal to get her to talk about Cyril. And so now, through a pair of binoculars, Sergeant Sienna watched as a small blonde woman appeared at the far end of the alley. His heartbeat picked up as he realized it was definitely Cassidy, and he watched as she walked right up the alley and began talking to the informant, the man who had been pacing before on his phone. And when Sienna saw the money and drugs change hands, he gave the command on his radio to go ahead and move in. In an instant, 2 police cars rounded the corner with their sirens blaring, cutting off both ends of the alley. Cassidy looked completely startled and started to run before the arriving deputies boxed her in, and moments later, they had her in handcuffs. The following morning, Sienna stood outside of an interview room at the sheriff's office in Rochester, New York. He looked through a two-way mirror, and on the other side of the glass, he watched a deputy question Cassidy, the girlfriend of Tabitha's half-brother Cyril, who was still missing and still a major suspect. Now, Cassidy had been completely stonewalling police since they'd arrested her for selling cocaine the night before, and she was still insisting that she had no idea where Cyril was or why he'd disappeared. Now, to this point, the deputy who was speaking to Cassidy had not brought up Tabitha's murder. And so at this point, Cassidy seemed to think that her only problem was the cocaine charge. And so as Sienna watched this interview just kind of go in circles and drag because Cassidy just was not giving them anything, finally Sienna just couldn't take it anymore, and he just busted in the room and he slammed a folder down right on the table, totally shocking not just the deputy, but Cassidy. They both looked at him like, what are you doing? And then before Cassidy could say or do anything, Sienna looked right at her and just said, "I don't care about your drug charge. What I want to know is what you know about Tabitha Bryant's murder." And at first, Cassidy just stared back at Sienna and said nothing. And for a minute, Sienna thought maybe he had sort of miscalculated here. But then after a long, awkward pause, Cassidy's whole demeanor shifted and she started to talk.
Because who called Kevin? Who
That's what I've been
called
wondering,
Kevin? And right before, it was a female voice, right?
That's what he said.
Based on witness testimony, evidence collected at the crime scene, and the killer's eventual confession, here is a reconstruction of what police believe happened to Tabitha Bryant on the night of July 13th, 2003. Around 11:50 p.m., the killer very carefully crept through the first floor of the Bryant home carrying a rifle, and they went straight to the den, where they found Tabitha asleep on the pull-out couch. For a moment, the killer paused, just staring down at Tabitha, wondering, questioning whether they could really go through with this. But then, after just a little bit of deliberation in their own minds, they raised the rifle and they fired. The bullet entered Tabitha's skull right under her right eye, but it didn't kill her. And so as the killer is standing there watching, expecting Tabitha to basically be motionless, Tabitha wasn't. Her body began jerking around, and then she suddenly reached up and grabbed at her cheek, and she sat up and she looked at the killer and began to scream. And so the killer immediately fired 2 more times, but Tabitha was moving around so much in her own panic that both shots missed. And then on the 4th shot, when the killer pulled the trigger for the 4th time, the rifle jammed. And so at this point, the killer completely panicked. And so the killer turns and they run into the kitchen. All the while, Tabitha is flailing around in the den. She's screaming, blood's going everywhere. And the killer, they grab a butcher's knife from the kitchen. They run back into the den. And when they get there, they see Tabitha is now standing. And she's clutching at her face. She's screaming. And the killer tackles her back onto the bed and begins stabbing her over and over again in the neck and the chest until she does finally go limp. When the killer climbed off of Tabitha and stood back up, they realized they, like the rest of the room, were covered in blood. And so the killer began just sort of backing away from the scene, not really sure what they were going to do. And as they're doing this, they hear a noise behind them and they whip around and they see there was a figure coming down the stairs. And when this figure got to the bottom of the stairs, they walked right up to the killer and handed them an envelope. And the killer took the envelope, blood all over them. They take the envelope, they open it up, they look inside to confirm that yes, it was stuffed with $100 bills.
Yep.
It would turn out the person who actually wielded the rifle and the knife and literally killed Tabitha was her half-brother Cyril. He got covered in blood so that the real mastermind, Tabitha's husband, Kevin, could keep his hands clean.
Pay hit.
Kevin paid Cyril and his girlfriend Cassidy $5,000 to do his dirty work for him. Cyril committed the murder, and Cassidy drove the getaway car. But long before they got to the house that night, Kevin was setting things up so that the murder would go according to his plan. Kevin opened the garage and unlocked the door to the house so that Cyril could come inside no problem. And when he found Tabitha in their bed upstairs, he woke her up and told her to head on down to the den, where he knew Cyril would look for her. Kevin was motivated by anger over Tabitha's affair with Keith, and also the fear that he would lose his kids if they got divorced. But ironically, it was actually Kevin's own actions that drove Tabitha, literally, into Keith's arms. Kevin portrayed himself as this, hardworking lawyer who basically was a workaholic, and all he did was provide for his family. But in reality, he was a drug and sex addict who routinely brought sex workers to his law office. His idea of working on his marriage, as he said he and Tabitha were doing after he discovered her affair, really just involved taking Tabitha to strip clubs and then pressuring her into having group sex with other sex workers. And then he would also pressure her to give lap dances to the other clientele. And one of those other clientele was Keith. That's how they met. Kevin and Cyril were both convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life without parole. As for Cassidy, she ultimately took a plea deal and received 15 years.
She was in on it too.
I mean, yeah.
Go.
I'm about to say, with the information that he told us, like even with the shots, the amount of shots being fired, the fact that she's screaming, all this stuff. I'm like, you upstairs and you don't hear none of this going on. Like the house ain't huge.
That was the first day of giveaway.
You know what I'm saying? And then the fact that, oh, I'm going to take the trash out, and just this night I'm going to leave the garage open, which is not normal. But I feel like you should check your house before you go to bed to make sure everything is in place and good, every door locked, everything good. You know what I'm saying? The fact that wasn't done. Also, I was mad the fact that she already sleeps. Son sleep, everybody sleep. Why? I mean, I get you mad, whatever the case may be. She had an affair, whatever. She could have just stayed. I'm like, the fact that you forcing her to go down.
But were you really mad because she had an affair?
No, because you ain't perfect. You got your stuff going on, and you pushed
her into that life.
Yes.
Because also the age range, the age difference is so weird.
And it's actually you was doing all of that beforehand, making her do all this stuff beforehand. That's how she met Keith.
But also, did you start dating her? When did y'all start dating?
Yeah, good question.
But also, Cyril, I kind of was suspicious of him from the jump, right? Mm-hmm. Also, Cyril and Cassie used to go hang out at strip club too, aka Muscle, aka they had a whole little ring going on.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
and then the fact that this is your, what is the half sister?
Yeah, but I'm like, how half? It's like, were y'all raised? Like, did y'all? Because he really didn't elaborate on that. But did y'all have the same mom or did y'all have the same dad? Because if y'all didn't have the same dad, y'all might not be as close. But if you got the same mom, you're gonna be like me and my sister. We got the same mom and same dad, right? Yeah. So we raised up on the same household. Yeah. So I'm super super close to my dad's sister. Mm-hmm. I got two other sisters. I never say half anything. Yeah. I have two other sisters that have different mothers. Both of them have different mothers. Yeah. I didn't grow up with them, but when I see them, I don't look at them as like stranger. But one of my sisters, I can count on one hand how many times I've seen her, like spend time with her in my life. Yeah. The other one, probably, the same with the other one. But I have conversations with them like, like I'm always like, what's up, sis? And I'm the baby too, so. Yeah. But I'm not as close with them. But can I pick myself up to? No, I can't do that.
No. And then the fact that you didn't show up to her funeral was also a red flag for me.
Also, who idea was it to kick Sarah out the house? Because also, we don't know. We don't know. But if it is Tabitha, that gives him even more motive and he's pissed off. Because now you got me booted out of here. Yeah. And that's where me and my girlfriend Cassidy was staying with y'all. So now
it's just some
or you done caused so many feelings with Keith that it's fucking up what I got going on with you know what I'm saying?
Well, you said what?
Because since Tabitha and Keith's relationship, it seems like it was getting too close. Mm-hmm. Now you done pissed off Kevin, and now Kevin got me up out the house. And now I'm pissed off.
I'm talking about with Cyril.
Yeah. And I was like, who gave him a phone call at that time of the night? I'm like, It's a girl. Who randomly will be calling you unless you pay for somebody to put out a hit? She called to verify. Is Tabitha asleep? Yeah, she's asleep. Okay, this, all right, it's a go.
And then I'm pretty sure with the screaming, like, oh, this is a child screaming or a woman or
and adult. And that's why I said what I said earlier.
I ran to my kids first. I get that they are closer.
That makes
sense. What I'm saying? But we know nothing is going on this top floor.
But it's still
what I'm saying? Wife. But you're right.
So at the end of the day, it's still being your wife.
So you just literally sitting upstairs in the bedroom.
Let me say this. It's your wife, right? Mm-hmm. It's your wife. You're still so mad at her where we can't sleep in the same bedroom. So there's still emotions behind it. You're not gonna let somebody just come in here. You hear her scream. I don't give a fuck how pissed off you are at her. You still have feelings. That's the reason why you know what I'm saying?
You would think so, but in this case, I guess It was more rage than love.
Okay, he like, you got me fucked up. You fucked up what I got going on here.
But you still be on that, like, you still be doing. It's the fact that you wasn't in control of who she was talking to or who she was met. Like, that's how I look at it, because you already be having her, I guess because it's with, no, it has to be with other men too, because you made her give like other people lap dances and stuff like that.
But it's the audacity she has to even have a connection with Keith.
Outside of him.
Yes.
Yes.
And I'll say this.
And
you go.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say this as well. Like, when you really think about it, right? Mm-hmm. He's 45, she's 26. I really need to know when they started, so I can kind of resolve something that I got going on in my head.
Well, I guess you would have if we knew.
Oh, well, they got a 5-year-old, so you still got to do the math. She was probably 19 when they first started meeting. Could have been 18. Mm-hmm. But typically, reason why a lot of dudes like to date that young is due to control. Also, he has money. Mm-hmm. The law firm he probably is a lawyer, but lawyers can do other things too. Mm-hmm. So let's just say, what if he was a lawyer, but using the money he was making for her to cover up where he lacking that monetization from other stuff. You get what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So that could have been a thing.
That's so effed up, though. Like, you just just sit up in the room listening to everything go down. Oh, it's over.
And he gave Cyril the money and said, "Go, get going. I don't want to see you."
And you killed your sister with $5,000? Is that how much it was?
$5,000 back then, probably about $20,000 now.
Man,
well, I don't know
enough money to.
It ain't. I agree with you.
Nothing like that. That ain't crazy.
20,000. Let me see, 5,000. 2003.
You in your 2000s.
Come on. Let me see. 5,000. Sometimes you just got to do that. Because what is that actually worth today? Man, motherfucker, ain't even $10,000, bro. I'm not killing nobody
for no amount of money. Period.
Well, let me finish my statement.
I finished it for you.
I ain't killing nobody for no. You got to finish my statement.
For no amount of money.
I'm not killing somebody for $5,000. That ain't enough money.
For no amount of money.
That's not enough money. That's all I'm gonna say. Cause you never know what time. Like the way the economy going, it keep fucking up.
I would never take another person's life. Who am I? That's crazy.
Hey,
and this is your sister.
The way the economy going, y'all. Hey, life be life. I'll just play.
Rest in peace to Tabitha. Because that's
not my sister,
that's
bro.
Sad, bro. And my biggest thing, like, my heart goes out to them kids. Like, I know this been a long, like, 2003, so yeah, they grown now.
Over 20 years.
Yeah, but still.
Hey, think about it like this. If he know you were that easy to kill.
Where we going? I ain't reading your mind.
Then sorry, he lost another sibling.
But we don't know how.
And it was pretty hard. But if Kevin knows, I can get you to kill my wife, your sister, for $5,000. I must know I can get you to do some other shit for me too. Or do I know you have did some other shit already?
Wow.
Because he approached you and said, "I want you to kill yours."
Like, how did you how did you
That's your brother. You think somebody finna approach your brother and say, "Hey, I got $10,000 to take you out"? Your brother. Somebody approached your brother. What you think your brother gonna say? Man, get the fuck out of my face. He might kill him for even trying to approach him on that. Let's be real. You a bold motherfucker to come. That's like me approaching your brother saying, "Hey, can you take your sister out here?"
That'd be the last person you ask something to.
I'm just saying.
For real. That is crazy. Like, that's why. How did you even present this to him? Unless he just, like you said, just a junkie, because junkies will do anything for $1.
A junkie will. A junkie will. Or
I ain't gonna
that-
say every
or-
junkie.
shit.
I know some junkies.
Nah, most well, they ain't no junkie. If they ain't willing to do anything for anything,
Well, someone maybe take somebody's life.
nah, junkies
Well, I
will
do.
be. Come on,
Yeah.
come on. I
A
probably
lot
know
of junkies they'll do anything for $1. I don't want to put that on there. Some people like, I was a junkie once in my life, and I would never take nobody's
I'm
life.
an ethical junkie.
I got morals. You know what I'm saying?
I steal. I don't kill.
You know what I'm saying? For real. So.
Don't put that junkie type of tag on me.
But yeah, rest in peace to Tabitha. That's so sad.
He had to have
And
done
then
some
to,
other
like,
stuff.
The fact that the one shot didn't take her life, and then you tried to 3 more times.
And that's why she freaked the fuck out so much.
Because
Because
she
like my
seen
own
who
brother.
it was. I'm pretty sure maybe like a silhouette or something. I don't know how dark it was in the room. Maybe a little night light was. I don't know.
A white person
But-
look like a white person in pitch black darkness. I've seen white people in darkness.
But
bro.
that's
They
sad
look
to
white.
wake up into.
Now me,
Yeah.
you ain't gonna see me. Call me Castle. I'm that black.
Let's
in the
wrap it up,
dark.
babe.
No, I'm saying from summer camp like stuff. It'd be pitch black dark. You can see that white. I'll see a white person. They don't. Now me
I'm
walking
not even
around.
talking about what you were saying. You made me lose my train of thought. What I was trying to say.
Okay.
But anyway, let me wrap it up.
Oh, y'all spell myself.
Please do.
Let us know y'all thoughts in the comments down below. But until next time, y'all know how it go, man. I do go by the name DJ Dukia. This is
Sierra Nicole.
We are.
Kid and
We are.
Go and get it, ain't no time to kick it. Got a stack of flip for my foes. Dollar, dollar, dollar.